Video contains violent content, details that are not suitable for common perception. Please consider before watching. Chapter 151, Talent 2. The dark red poison energy rising from Mok Jaeongun's hands. It could be said to be a sign of unleashing the toad poison demon palm from the wave demon poison scripture. Watching this, Chong Ryong clicked her tongue inwardly. Is he capable of mastering poison techniques right away as well? Since his body was essentially that of a poison master from the beginning, she had considered the possibility, but to think it was actually possible. Poison techniques were on a different level compared to other martial arts. But seeing him embody it in an instant, it was truly a frightening level of talent. If it's this brat, it might really be possible to fulfill her 100-year-old grudge. However, he still needed more experience and time. The true power of the Heaven and Earth Society was not so easy to deal with. Therefore, hey mortal, aren't you revealing too much of your strength? Chong Ryong warned Mok Jaeongun in a low voice. If an awl is too sharp, it will pierce the handle. He needed to show just the right amount, but if he displayed too much talent, it might only raise their guard. In response to her words, Mok Jaeongun replied, I'm going to change my approach. Change your approach? What do you mean? It seems that moderation won't work if I want to contact the society leader. What? At Mok Jaeongun's words, Chong Ryong expressed her concern. Mortal, your rate of development is indeed very fast, but you're still only ahead among the disciples. You mustn't be impatient. That's not it. But I think the best choice will be necessary. The best choice? What was this fellow thinking? Hadn't he decided to build up his strength as much as possible under the shadow of the Shadow Clan master? Could it be that he was planning to overturn his plan and get involved in the competition to become the society leader's successor? As she was thinking that, Mok Jaeongun had already kicked the ground and launched himself towards Wu Horang, the trusted subordinate of Wei So-yun, the society leader's third disciple, who was bewildered. Swish. The trajectory drawn by the dark red haze was bold and aggressive beyond measure. It looked like a surging wave. Ugh. Wu Horang's expression darkened. Once he became convinced that Mok Jaeongun had mastered the Poison King Baek-saha's wave demon poison scripture, he realized it was dangerous to confront him in close combat. Whoosh. Wu Horang hurriedly used his lightness skill to widen the distance. It was already troublesome enough that he had to dispel the poison energy in his chest. He had thought he could easily subdue Mok Jaeongun since he had the upper hand in internal energy, but the situation had changed. I can't understand it. How was he able to use the Poison King's martial arts? Poison techniques weren't something that could be mastered so quickly. Swish. At that moment, Mok Jaeongun swung his palm, and the dark red poison energy haze flew towards him in a diagonal line. In response, Wu Horang raised his sword's sharp energy to cut through the front. Slash. Wu Horang generated wind pressure with the wide blade of his 9 harmony blade, which had cut through the poison energy. Whoosh. The dispersed poison energy scattered backward due to the wind pressure. Passing through the scattering poison energy, Mok Jaeongun kicked the blade of Wu Horang's 9 harmony blade like lightning. Clang. Then, like an eagle snatching its prey, he tried to grab Wu Horang's shoulders with his fingers. In response, Wu Horang tilted his head back and kicked Mok Jaeongun's thigh. Thud. Along with that, Wu Horang used the recoil to widen the distance again. Annoying. Poison was fatal even with a single touch. No matter how much he protected his body with true energy, he couldn't let his guard down. Mok Jaeongun provoked him with a smirk. How are you going to subdue me by just dodging? This bastard. He was angry at the provocation, but he had to respond calmly. If the opponent was a master of poison techniques, getting close would be disadvantageous, so he had to maintain distance and defend against the poison energy somehow. Tap 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 tap. Wu Horang, who had much more practical experience than his disciple Yip Weixian, didn't fall for the provocation and maintained even more distance. However, there was one thing he had overlooked. The moment he tried to create distance, a sharp blade energy rushed towards his forehead. At this clang, Wu Horang hurriedly blocked it by swinging his sword. What had targeted his forehead was none other than Mok Jaeongun's sword. Clang clang clang. As the blades of the sword and the sword collided, blue sparks flew. But Wu Horang frowned at the cracks visible between the sparks. That was because cracks were forming on the blade of the 9 harmony blade that was in contact with Mok Jaeongun's sword. Damn it! Wu Horang infused true energy into the blade and generated a repulsive force. Clang clang clang. At the same time he unleashed the fourth stance of the Bright Sun Sword art, the unique swordsmanship of Bright Blade King Sun Yun, called the Orderly Wheel Sword Barrier 1. The sharp trajectory of blade energy he created formed a barrier. The Bright Sun Sword art had 6 attacking stances and 3 defensive stances, and this was the most flawless defensive stance among them. Clang 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 clang. The collision between his Orderly Wheel Sword Barrier stance and Mok Jaeongun's overwhelming sword strikes produced an ear-splitting metallic sound. What the hell is this guy? Not only poison techniques, but his swordsmanship was also not ordinary. As a disciple of the Shadow Clan master he should have mastered the sword, but how did he learn swordsmanship to this level? He was puzzled for a moment. At that instant, thud. Clang 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 clang. Mok Jaeongun's short sword pierced through the barrier created by Wu Horang's 9 Harmony blade and spun around on its own. In that instant, thud. Mok Jaeongun lowered his stance flat towards the ground. Flowing Profound Leg Technique. 8th stance Soaring Profound Rising Strike. 3. Using his leg energy he rotated along the ground, digging underneath and immediately kicked upward, striking Wu Horang's chin. Leg technique. Poison techniques, sword techniques, and now he even unleashed such a high-level leg technique? Just how many martial arts did this bastard master? Thud. Wu Horang hurriedly tilted his head back. However, the key point of the Bai Haiyan Sunggayak was to kick upward and then strike downward. Bam. Ugh. Wu Horang's knees buckled as his right shoulder was struck downward. Not missing this opportunity, Mok Jaeongun tried to strike Wu Horang's chest with the Toad Poison Demon Palm. At that moment, Wu Horang let go of his 9 Harmony blade. Then kicking the ground he rolled backward. Thud thud thud. It wasn't a situation to worry about self-esteem. If he were to be hit by the poison palm here the match would be decided. However, Mok Jaeongun had already unleashed another leg technique, sending a flurry of kicks towards Wu Horang who was rolling on the ground. Flowing Profound Leg Technique 9th stance Torrential Rain Wild Wind. 4. Bam 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 bam. Mok Jaeongun's kicks flew with numerous afterimages. The power was truly unpredictable. Damn it! With his unstable posture, Wu Horang raised his sharp blade energy with his bare hands, drawing a long line on the ground and slashing upward. Then the fragments of the ground mixed with the blade energy and shot upward, colliding with the afterimages created by Mok Jaeongun's leg strikes. Wu Horang tried to regain his posture using this opportunity. Right at that moment, bang! What? Mok Jaeongun, who had been unleashing his stance, suddenly kicked the air. Then launching himself into the air he performed an aerial somersault, rotating his body and then kicked the air again, unleashing a sword stance towards Wu Horang. That sword stance was Flying Transforming Ghost Sword Technique. 5. 3rd stance Reflecting Transforming Sword Subjugation. 6. It was the ghostly sword art, the unique swordsmanship of the Shadow Clan master. The reflecting transforming sword subjugation, which could be considered the most destructive stance among the ghostly sword art, slashed Wu Horang diagonally from his shoulder to his chest. Slash. Ugh. A scream erupted from Wu Horang's mouth as he was cut by the sword. Then, unable to maintain his posture, he collapsed on the ground. Ha! Someone was hiding and watching their confrontation. That someone was none other than Seo Haiyan, the leader of the Grass Smoke clan, one of the 5 for trusted subordinates of Jang Nung-ak, the society leader's second disciple. She was genuinely shocked. How could this be? She had been hiding and waiting for Mok Jaeongun on Jang Nung-ak's orders. However, before she could make a move, Wu Horang had appeared first, so she had been hiding and observing the situation. Was he at this level? The real reason she had concealed her presence and observed the situation was to gauge Mok Jaeongun's true intentions. If he showed any signs of contact with Wai So-yun, it would have been an act of betrayal against her lord, so she had intended to observe and judge. However, something unexpected had occurred. He defeated Wu Horang? Who was Wu Horang? He was the society leader disciple of Bright Blade King Sun Yun, one of the 5 kings, and the grand clan leader of the Jeogwil clan. This alone was already remarkable, but he was also known to possess the highest martial prowess among the Heaven and Earth Society's disciples, being one of the 5 tigers. Defeating him, who was said to have no match except for executives of the Valley Master level or higher, was a shock in itself. Moreover, what was even more surprising was just how many martial arts did he master? If her eyes weren't deceiving her, the martial arts Mok Jaeongun had unleashed were all transcendent. From the Poison King Baeksaha's Wave Demon Poison Scripture, the Shadow Clan Master's ghostly sword art, to the unpredictable and destructive leg techniques, and the mysterious sword techniques that were difficult to find flaws in, which she had seen somewhere before. Each and every one of them appeared to be high-level martial arts that were very difficult to master. Impressive. She had guessed that he might be at the transcendent stage due to his brief exchange with Wei Mengqion, but she had never dreamed he would be at this level. I won't be a match for him. He had to admit it. If he was at this level, it seemed he could even compete with Ko Yun, who, known as the strongest of the Five Mountains Alliance and another member of the Five Tigers. No. That's uncertain. Even among the Five Tigers, she believed that Ko Yun, who the first mountain, was stronger than Wu Horang. Rather, if she had to name someone who could compete with Ko Yun, who, she would compare him to that person who was considered the undisputed best among the Five Tigers. That was how strong Ko Yun who truly was. But that wasn't what mattered now. Is this a good thing? Her lord was already in a very unpleasant mood due to the death of Wei Mengqion, the second mountain of the Five Mountains Alliance, and the failure to gain the support of the Poison King Baeksaha. If Mok Jaeongun, who was the joint disciple of the Poison King and the Shadow Clan Master and had defeated Wu Horang to become a new member of the Five Tigers, joined her lord's faction, it would improve his unpleasant mood. It's even more of a two birds with one stone since he already suspected Wu Horang of killing Wei Mengqion. Thinking it was a good thing, she was about to make her move. After all, the match was over, and since Mok Jaeongun had so miserably defeated Wei Soyun's trusted subordinate, there was no reason for him to join her faction, so there was no need to hesitate any longer. But it was right at that moment. Well, that was quite an entertaining spectacle. Flinch. When did he? Startled by the gruff voice coming from behind her, she hurriedly used her movement technique to create distance. Since when was he behind her? She hadn't sensed his presence at all. Thud. After creating distance, she quickly turned her head. But there was no one there. What was going on? She clearly heard a voice from behind her. As she was puzzled, the voice spoke again from behind her. I've been watching with you all this time, so why are you so surprised? Shudder. Those words sent chills down her spine. That meant he had been behind her the whole time and she hadn't noticed until now? Seo Hyen was so trembling that she couldn't turn her head. Then the owner of the voice said, I was thinking of letting one or two of my disciples have a chance so it wouldn't end too quickly, but that would be too much of a waste. Could it be that the person behind her right now was the eldest young master? Chapter 152, Talent 3. Flying Transforming Ghost Sword Technique. 1. Third Stance Reflecting Transforming Sword Subjugation. The ghostly sword art, the unique swordsmanship of the Shadow Clan Master. The reflecting transforming sword subjugation, which could be considered the most destructive stance among the ghostly sword art, slashed Wu Horang, the trusted subordinate of Wei Soyun, the society leader's third disciple, diagonally from his shoulder to his chest. Ugh. A scream erupted from Wu Horang's mouth as he was cut by the sword. Then, unable to maintain his posture, he staggered backward and collapsed on the ground. Was this how he was going to die? At that moment, Wu Horang's closed eyes opened. Cough. Wu Horang coughed up blood. Fortunately, he had not lost his life. How long had it been since he was directly cut by someone else? No, this was the first time he had suffered like this. I feel lost. Mok Jaeongun was not a superior martial artist compared to him, but rather inferior in terms of internal energy. Yet he had never predicted that he would be defeated in a duel of technique execution. What was the reason for his defeat? It seemed to lie in Mok Jaeongun's unconventional nature and his ability to utilize various martial arts. If he had even a little understanding of him from the beginning, he might not have let his guard down like this. But what good would it do to dwell on it now? Defeat was defeat with no room for excuses. A shadow fell over his face. It was Mok Jaeongun who had approached and was looking down at him from above. At this, Wu Horang said, Cough. Why didn't you cut me properly? Although there was quite a bit of bleeding, Mok Jung-un's sword had not cut him deep enough to be fatal. If it had been even an inch deeper, he might have died. In response to his words, Mok Jung-un smirked and bent down to perform acupressure on Wu Horang's chest. Tap 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 tap. Blood stopping points. The points Mok Jung-un had pressed were acupoints for stopping bleeding. To the puzzled Wu Horang, Mok Jung-un shrugged his shoulders and said, "If I kill you, your lord Lady Wai So-yun, and even Elder Bright Blade King will try to kill me, so that would be a reckless move." Clench. At Mok Jung-un's words, Wu Horang bit his lower lip tightly. It was truly humiliating beyond measure. To put it differently, it meant that if it weren't for his lord, the young lady, and his master, Mok Jung-un wouldn't have spared him. But what could the loser say at this point? Go. Wu Horang said to Mok Jung-un briefly. At this, Mok Jung-un asked, "Where should I go? Didn't you come to take me? Since the young lady called for me, I'll escort. Are you trying to make me miserable?" Miserable? Ah, is it because of your injuries? He could just let it slide, but this fellow deliberately poked at the sore spot. Wu Horang spoke with a forceful voice. "I will tell the young lady that I proposed a duel first to repay my disciple's debt, so just leave." This was the maximum concession he could make. Having been defeated in the duel, he didn't want to show this miserable state to the young lady and see this fellow gloating. So you're asking me not to meet the young lady? Who said that? Yes. If that's what you want, I should comply. Then just leave quietly. With you Aren't you forgetting something? What? Don't you have something to give me? Something to give? For a moment Wu Horang's eyes wavered. In his resentment over the defeat, he had forgotten about it. He was the one who had proposed the wager using the young lady's tokens they each possessed before the duel. Damn it. At that time he had been certain that he would win. But the result had turned out to be the opposite. Wu Horang gritted his teeth and gestured with his eyes, pointing to his lower body, and said to Mok Jung-un, "It's in the pocket on the right side of my waist." Is that so? Mok Jung-un unhesitatingly took out the token from the right pocket hanging on his waist. This token was not directly given by Wai So-yun anyway, so taking it would only raise unnecessary suspicion and have no effect. However, it's a pity. You shouldn't have made such a wager. Crack. The token crumbled and shattered in Mok Jung-un's hand, and Wu Horang lost the ability to use the token he had received from his lord, Wai So-yun. Seeing the fragments of the shattering token, Wu Horang couldn't hide his despair. He had wanted to use that token as a pretext to express his feelings to her when he would one day become the most precious person to her. But all of that had turned to dust. Well then, take care of your body, and next time. I almost forgot. Mok Jung-un, who was about to get up, bent down again and whispered in his ear. Just in case, let me tell you, I don't care who you like. So you don't have to worry about me telling her. At his words, Wu Horang frowned. Could he trust this fellow's words? He had been worried that this fellow might reveal his hidden true intentions to the young lady. As he was thinking that, Mok Jung-un said with a smile, "Rather, thanks to you, it has become much easier for me to choose." "Thank you." What? At Mok Jung-un's words, Wu Horang's expression stiffened. What did he mean by that? It had become easier for him to choose? Could it be? Realizing the true meaning behind those words, Wu Horang's face turned red, but Mok Jung-un nonchalantly got up, leaving him behind. Mok Jung-un looked at the blade of his short sword. It's magnificent. It indeed seemed like a precious sword made by the legendary craftsman Gu Yijia before it became the demon sword. There was not a single drop of blood on the blade. Swords that were crudely forged or made would have blood sticking to the body after cutting something, making them sticky or rusty, but strangely this sword was clean. As if it had cleansed itself. That mortal won't choose that wench. As Mok Jung-un was looking at the sword with satisfaction, Chong Ryong's voice reached his ears. Mok Jung-un didn't deny it. Probably not. After dealing with Yip Wai-sian and now his elder martial brother Wu Horang, there seemed to be no one particularly useful around the society leader's third disciple, Wai So-yun. The so-called trusted subordinates saw her as a woman before seeing her as their lord. Therefore Mok Jung-un had decided to exclude her. I agree with your judgment. Chong Ryong also agreed with Mok Jung-un's decision. Wu Horang, who had fought against Mok Jung-un, was one of the 5 tigers, known as the top disciples of the Heaven and Earth Society, and could be considered her right-hand man. Such a person harbored romantic feelings and acted against the will of his lord? If that was the case, there was no need to consider that organization anymore. The lack of capable subordinates can also be said to reflect the poor qualities of the leader. No matter how outstanding Wai So-yun was as an individual, if the people around her were not up to par and had other ulterior motives, the position of the successor would be out of reach. But what will you do? The second disciple doesn't seem like a good choice either. In Chang Ryong's view, it wasn't just the third disciple Wai So-yun who was the problem. The second disciple, Jang Nung-ak, seemed to have many capable talents under him, but he himself didn't seem to possess good qualities as a leader. It's difficult to choose between the two. That's true. What Mok Jae-eun wanted now was someone who was closest to and most suitable for the position of the successor. By getting close to such a person, the chances of somehow contacting the society leader would increase. If you're not satisfied with either of them, there's another option. Another option? Why are you asking when you already know? Are you referring to the original plan? Yes. That's also one way, but the situation has changed. It's still a time when you need to build your strength, mortal. The situation hasn't changed. Focusing solely on building strength seems a bit inefficient. Inefficient? Are you getting too impatient after finding out that the society leader is connected to your revenge target? Well, I just want to know. Don't rush. To shake things up from the inside, you still need to grow and make allies internally. In response to Chang Ryong's words, Mok Jae-eun showed a faint smile. Mok Jae-eun's goal was to find the one who killed his grandfather, but her goal was to fulfill her own grudge. Therefore, their thoughts were bound to differ at this point. Mok Jae-eun half-heartedly replied to her advice. Yes. At least try to listen even with one ear. Chang Ryong clicked her tongue inwardly. This fellow never listened to other people's advice once he made a decision. At that moment, Mok Jae-eun said, I don't think we need to limit ourselves to the second or third disciple. What? Don't tell me you're... I want to meet the eldest young master once. Are you talking about that fellow who is currently closest to the society leader's position? Yes. I remember him being mentioned as such. Both the Corpse Blood Valley leader Lee Ji-yeom and the Shadow Clan master had said that the one who currently had the most support within the Heaven and Earth Society and was closest to the successor's position due to his strength alone was none other than the eldest young master Na Yeol-ryang. Considering this, joining his faction might actually increase the chances of contacting the society leader. Chang Ryong clicked her tongue and said to Mok Jae-eun, It doesn't seem like a particularly good choice. Why not? The second and third disciples are in a position to follow you, but that eldest young master fellow has nothing to gain. Do you think you can make him move according to your will? There's some truth to that. But there's no harm in trying. You're the type who won't be satisfied until you try it yourself, whether it's dung or paste. Anyway, I've warned you. It's still too early. Yes. I understand. Flinch. Suddenly Mok Jae-eun frowned. Why are you doing that? The energy. Energy? Mok Jae-eun turned his head and looked at the southwest corner of the wall. In fact, he already knew that someone else was hiding there and observing him. Mok Jae-eun guessed that this person was probably sent by Jang Nung-ak, the society leader's second disciple. So he thought that if he moved from this spot they would reveal themselves. But suddenly the person's energy fluctuated and then subsided. What? The sudden subsiding of energy meant that there was an incident such as the consumption of true energy or injury. He was puzzled. Thud. At the sound of someone collapsing, he turned his head and saw that his guard Suk-young had collapsed on the ground at some point. He looked around but no one was in sight. Mok Jae-eun frowned and approached Suk-young to check his pulse, and it seemed that he had fainted after his acupoints were suppressed. Who is it? Then when he heard something again and turned his head, Wu Ho-rang, who had been lying on the ground with injuries, had his eyes closed and his head drooping to the side. He also seemed to have lost consciousness. At this, Mok Jae-eun let out a soft sigh and said, Who are you? There was definitely someone there. At that moment, a voice came from behind. You're a peculiar fellow. When? Mok Jae-eun's eyes narrowed. Without him even noticing, an unidentified person had approached him from behind at some point. Since gaining enlightenment at the Corpse Blood Valley's treasure warehouse and thanks to his keen eyes, he had become more sensitive to energy and could quickly find the energy of others. Yet he couldn't sense the other person's energy. That meant, Can they conceal their energy like the death chi? Seemed to be the case. Otherwise, there was no way he wouldn't be completely caught by his energy perception. As he was thinking that, the voice continued. Judging from your fighting, you seem to have reached the level of a grandmaster, but the energy you emit is at most at the early peak stage. The unidentified person was evaluating him. What was peculiar was that this person seemed to be deliberately disguising their voice, making it thick as if to conceal their identity. At this, Mok Jaeongun spoke. I apologize, but may I ask who you are? In response to Mok Jaeongun's question, a smirking laugh was heard. Then the unidentified person said, try to guess. At those words, Mok Jaeongun scratched his head as if he was in a difficult situation. Oh my, this is quite troublesome. Hearing your voice, I've never met you before, but you're telling me to guess. Then why don't you directly confirm my face? Is that so? Since you say that. Swish. Mok Jaeongun quickly turned his head. But there was no one behind him. There was hardly any sound of movement, but in an instant, the person had left his field of vision. This alone was enough for Mok Jaeongun to know for certain. Fast. The fact that their movement was faster than the speed of turning his head meant that the other person had definitely reached a higher realm than him. They seemed to be much stronger than Wu Horang, who was known as one of the 5 tigers, Oho, the top disciples within the Heaven and Earth Society. That meant they were at least at the level of a Valley Master, Gokju, or above. How can you face me like this? The unidentified person lightly provoked Mok Jaeongun. It seemed as if they were testing him. Should he play along? As he was thinking that, Chong Ryong's voice reached Mok Jaeongun's ears. That mortal fellow behind you. The colors of his pupils are different. The right one is white. Unlike Mok Jaeongun, Chong Ryong could clearly see her immediate surroundings. At Chong Ryong's words, Mok Jaeongun realized the identity of the person behind him. It was because he had heard about the appearance of some important figures through the Shadow Clan master. At this, swish, Mok Jaeongun brought his hands together, slightly bowed his head and said, Mok Jaeongun, disciple of the Shadow Clan, greets the eldest young master. At Mok Jaeongun's greeting, there was a brief silence behind him. Then, swish. Someone poked their face out to Mok Jaeongun's right. As Chong Ryong had said, one of his pupils was black while the other was white, or more precisely a gray-white color. He was a handsome man with thick, striking features. The moment their eyes met, Mok Jaeongun felt a strange sensation. That sensation was none other than a sense of kinship. What is this? As he was wondering, the handsome man asked in an intrigued tone. How did you know? Chapter 153, Kinship 1. Since the Corpse Blood Valley was established, there has been only one person who acquired all the Society Leader Disciple tokens. Those were the words of Valley Master Lee Jiom before the final gate of the Corpse Blood Valley. At the time, Mok Jaeongun, who wasn't particularly interested in who had obtained all the Society Leader Disciple tokens, only asked one thing. May I ask what benefits there are to obtaining all the Society Leader Disciple tokens? You can receive teachings from the Society Leader. This answer left everyone unable to hide their surprise. The reason was simple. Is it that surprising to receive teachings from the Society Leader? Mo Harang had satisfied Mok Jaeongun's curiosity when he was puzzled. The Society Leader is known as one of the 6 heavens, the pinnacle of the current martial arts world. Putting everything else aside, receiving teachings from one of the 6 strongest people in the world is... She couldn't even finish her words. That's how much the prestige of the 6 heavens could be considered the highest in the Central Plains. If one could gain the opportunity to receive teachings from such a great figure, who wouldn't be willing to risk their life? However, since the Corpse Blood Valley was established, there was only one such person. And that one person was none other than... Is it this person? The man whose eyes were locked with Mok Jaeongun's. The Society Leader's first disciple, the eldest young master Na Yul Riang. It hadn't been long since Mok Jaeongun had learned this fact. It was the Shadow Clan master who had informed him. Both the second disciple, young master Jang Nung-ak, and the third disciple, young lady Y So-yun, possess innate martial talent. However, even they can be considered lacking compared to the eldest young master Na Yul Riang. To that extent. Yes. Let me put it this way to make it more impactful. What? The eldest young master was the first and last person to obtain all the Society Leader Disciple tokens of the Corpse Blood Valley since its establishment and become the Society Leader's disciple. He obtained all the Society Leader Disciple tokens of the Corpse Blood Valley and became a disciple? Was the eldest young master the one and only person the Corpse Blood Valley Master Li Jiom had mentioned? It was truly astonishing. While the second young master and the third young miss were selected based on their talent, the eldest young master rose from the bottom and reached his current position on his own. That's impressive. Yes. He has charisma and is impressive. But more than that, he is also a truly fearsome person. A fearsome person. The Shadow Clan master had described the eldest young master as a fearsome person. Compared to the second lord, Zhang Nungike, whom he had described as cunning and tyrannical, requiring caution, he seemed to show considerable wariness towards the eldest young master. Why was that? As he wondered, the Shadow Clan master said, "Actually, if we only consider his talent in both civil and martial arts, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the position of the next society leader is reserved for the eldest young master. If it's not an exaggeration, why are the disciples competing for the successor's position?" It made no sense to him. If he was that outstanding, was there a need to have them compete? Didn't they say he had the most support among the disciples and was recognized by everyone for his excellence in both civil and martial arts? Then why hadn't the society leader, who was said to be bedridden, appointed him as the successor yet? In response to Mok Jiongun's question, the Shadow Clan master said something unexpected. The society leader might be wary of him too. What? What did he mean by that? The society leader of the Heaven and Earth Society, known as one of the 6 heavens, the strongest in the world, was wary of his own first disciple? Something seemed odd. Is there a reason to be wary? If it's because of his talent, shouldn't he be happy since he's the next successor? Normally that would be the case. Is there another reason? If there's a reason, there must be one. What is it? He possesses overwhelming martial talent to the extent of passing all the gates of the Corpse Blood Valley as the top disciple and is proficient in both civil and martial arts. So why do only 40% of people support him? Come to think of it, that was true. Before hearing from the Shadow Clan master, he had thought that since they were competing for the successor position, all 3 of them were either outstanding or nearly equal in level, so a decision couldn't be made. That's why he had thought 40% each was reasonable. But if he was as dominant as the Shadow Clan master said and was known as the society leader's first disciple, it wouldn't be strange for him to have 80% or 90% support, not just 40%. That meant one thing could be inferred. Is there a disqualifying factor that could overturn all of that? Unless there was something that could be a decisive flaw, there was no reason for the society leader not to appoint him as the successor. In response to Mok Jiongun's question, the Shadow Clan master spoke in a meaningful tone. He's different from ordinary people. What do you mean by different? Exactly what I said. The eldest young master's standards of thinking, thoughts, and emotions are very different from ordinary people. I don't know if it's something he was born with or if it's due to environmental factors, but his difference seems to have prevented the society leader from making a definite decision. Different? In what aspect was he different from ordinary people? What was certain was that many people were reluctant about the eldest young master because of this difference. Those who followed the second disciple Zhang Nungike, the third disciple Wai Soyun, or remained neutral were probably such people. How did you know? At the question of the eldest young master Na Yulriang, who had one pupil black and the other gray-white, Mok Jiongun suddenly recalled what the Shadow Clan master had said. He's different from ordinary people. Mok Jiongun's lips twitched slightly. He didn't quite understand in what sense the Shadow Clan master had said those words. Rather, he felt a strange emotion for the first time. It was a kind of kinship. Interesting. For the first time in his life he felt this kind of feeling from someone else. However, it wasn't just Mok Jiongun who felt that emotion. The moment his eyes met Mok Jiongun's, Na Yulriang was also captivated by a peculiar feeling. A mysterious feeling he had never experienced from ordinary people. It was emanating from this fellow. Even though he knew his identity, their eyes met without wavering. Na Yulriang could instinctively tell. Interesting. What do you mean? We're of the same kind. At Na Yulriang's words, Mok Jiongun's eyes narrowed. Did this person also receive the same feeling as him? Kinship the same kind. Cough cough. Promise me. What are you saying? That you will never reveal your true nature. His grandfather had warned him until the very end. Not to reveal his true nature that was different from ordinary people. When his grandfather was by his side, he had tried his best to do so, but as he witnessed countless bloodshed, his suppressed true nature awakened. His grandfather had called it a murderous nature, but Mok Jiongun didn't think so. It was a kind of liberation of his confined self. Different, huh? This was the reason Na Yolriang said he was different from ordinary people. Did that mean he also fell into that category? It was truly fascinating. At that moment, Na Yolriang said to Mok Jiongun, I was wondering why a fellow who was taken as a hostage by the righteous faction defected to our association, but I think I know the reason now. You don't fit in with those old-fashioned places that talk about justice or whatever. At his words, Mok Jiongun was about to reveal his true feelings but changed his answer. The Heaven and Earth Society just suited me better, that's all. Regardless of the kinship he felt, there was a difference in their positions. The other person was the eldest young master, the society leader's first disciple. Even if he gave a similar feeling, he wasn't someone to be treated casually considering his position and martial prowess. Swish. At that moment, Na Yolriang put his hands behind his back and leisurely circled around Mok Jiongun. He was examining him from head to toe with his eyes. Being observed like this, aside from the kinship, wasn't a pleasant feeling. It's truly strange that even when you're this close, I can't properly sense your energy. Where did you learn this technique? At the direct question, Mok Jiongun lowered his head and replied, I learned it from the Shadow Clan Master. The Shadow Clan Master? Yes. That's odd. Although the Shadow Clan Master's energy is known to have a stronger tendency towards Yin energy compared to others, it's not at a level where he can completely control and conceal himself. Judging from Na Yolriang's tone, he spoke as if he was a level above the Shadow Clan Master. However, it was difficult to simply deny this because the energy emanating from Na Yolriang was strongly condensed into a single point in his lower abdomen, unable to leak out. Although it was condensed, the energy faintly leaking from that point seemed like it could explode at any moment. Strong. It was difficult to even estimate how strong he was. From what he could see now, he might even be comparable to the level of the Five Kings. Wang. He seemed to understand why the Shadow Clan Master had said he was more outstanding than the second disciple Zhang Nung AK and the third disciple Y Soyun. At that moment, Na Yolriang said with a smirk, You're already trying to hide it. No, I wouldn't dare do that to the eldest young master. Really? That's right. Good. As a martial artist, there might be aspects you want to hide at first. Since it's the first time, I'll let it slide. Well, that's not my real concern anyway. With those words, Na Yolriang suddenly stroked his chin. Then, as if pondering, he stared at Mok Jiongun and opened his mouth. How did you know earlier? Earlier? How did you know who I was? I disguised my voice and you couldn't have met me before. Even if he could receive information about appearances as a disciple of the Shadow Clan, who was in charge of information and artifacts, he had guessed correctly without even seeing him. Na Yolriang wanted to solve that mystery. At his question, Mok Jiongun nonchalantly said, It was a guess. A guess. Yes. You guessed who I was based on a hunch without any information. It wasn't without any information. It wasn't. Poison King was the only one who hadn't visited me, and I guessed based on the fact that you knocked out the subordinates of the second young master and the third young miss who had tried to contact me. At Mok Jiongun's words, Na Yolriang extended his hand and said, I might not know about knocking out the third junior sister, as follower, but where was the second junior brother's subordinate? At this, Mok Jiongun pointed to the corner of the wall with his hand. It was the place where the emanating energy had suddenly decreased for a moment. Didn't you knock out Seo Haiyan, the leader of the Grass Smoke clan, a subordinate of the second young master? These words brought a glint to Na Yolriang's eyes. He was surprised not only that he had noticed someone secretly observing him with his perception but also that he had correctly guessed who it was. Your energy perception is very sensitive. That's not true. I had no idea you were here. At Mok Jiongun's words, Na Yolriang chuckled and snorted. It was a reaction as if it was natural. It could be seen as arrogant, but it rather suited him well. Well, leaving that aside, you guessed based on knocking them out? Yes. There's no way their lords, the second or third disciples, would suddenly knock them out when they were trying to bring me into their factions. And there would be even less reason for other executives to knock them out, right? Yes. At Mok Jiongun's answer, Na Yelriang said with a smile. I thought your martial prowess was decent, but you also use your head quite well. You flatter me. If I had left it to my apprentices, it would have been somewhat enjoyable to watch you fight, but now that I've seen you in person, I can't do that. At his words, Mok Jiongun thought. As expected, was the eldest young master also trying to bring him into his faction? However, unexpected words came out of his mouth. You must have also felt that you're a similar kind to me, right? So here's the thing. I've changed my mind. For a fellow like you, it's either I can control you completely, or it's best to kill you right now. Swish. As soon as he finished speaking, a blue blade energy gathered at the eldest young master Na Yelriang's index finger. It was a sword force. Chapter 154 Kinship 2. So here's the thing. I've changed my mind. For a fellow like you, it's either I can control you completely, or it's best to kill you right now. Swish. The blue blade energy emanating from the two gathered fingertips of the society leader's first disciple, eldest young master Na Yelriang, was the sword force formed by the condensation of true energy. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks began to form on the ground around where Na Yelriang was standing. It was the aftermath of the blade energy flowing from his body. Mok Jiongun's eyes became sharper than before. This is troublesome. Although he had anticipated Na Yelriang's martial prowess to some extent, it completely exceeded his expectations. Contrary to his expectation that he might have reached the pinnacle of the peak stage, surprisingly, the eldest young master Na Yelriang had broken through the bottleneck and reached the transformation realm. Chong Ryong, who was inside Mok Jiongun, also noticed this and said, he has broken through the bottleneck. It seems so. This is serious. Now I understand why he called you his kind. Chong Ryong clicked her tongue. Even if they were the society leader's disciples, if they were involved with the executives, they wouldn't carelessly mess with them. But this fellow, the eldest young master, was different. The killing intent in his eyes and the way he immediately invoked the sword force reminded her of Mok Jiongun, showing that his thinking was different from ordinary people. How many people would judge their opponent based on their own perception and try to kill them at their first meeting? In that regard, they were indeed similar. Swish. At that moment, the eldest young master Na Yelriang's fingers twitched. Mok Jiongun had no time to think and quickly twisted his body to the left. Thud. Slash. As soon as he did that, the air right in front of his nose was cut by a sharp energy, and a blue light sliced through space. Then it cleanly cut into the ground in a straight line. The distance stretched over 10 zhang. Mok Jiongun frowned. That bastard really intends to kill you. I know. Otherwise, there was no way he would show such an incredible thing. If he had reacted a little slower, his body would have been precisely split in half. Mok Jiongun clicked his tongue inwardly. From the way he acted immediately upon making up his mind, his way of thinking was indeed quite similar to his own. He was an extremely efficient person. Even if he were in the opposite position, he would have made a similar judgment. Neither Na Yelriang nor himself were the type to truly be loyal to someone or open their hearts. Right at that moment. Swish. You have good eyes. Thud. Along with the voice, 2 fingers flew towards his eyes. The moment he heard the word eyes, he reflexively tilted his head to the side, allowing Mok Jiongun to narrowly avoid having his eyes pierced. However, thud. As soon as he dodged, Na Yelriang swung his arm in that state and struck his face. The martial power was so strong that Mok Jiongun's body flew to the side and crashed into the wall of the courtyard. Crash. As his body collided, the wall crumbled. Ha! Blood flowed from Mok Jiongun's mouth. The moment the martial power penetrated his face, he had tried to disperse it with the death chi, but it was too fast, and it seemed his mouth had been torn. Troublesome. This was too strong. Mok Jiongun staggered and regained his stance. Seeing him like this, a glint appeared in the eldest young master Na Yelriang's eyes. He endured. He had felt surprised 3 times now. The first slash he had swung was intended to kill Mok Jiongun instantly. But surprisingly, the fellow saw his fingers moving and moved his body without hesitation to dodge it. So, thinking he had better eyes and insight than expected, he tried to take his eyes first. But he dodged this too. Sturdy. The arm he had swung right after dodging the eyes was not only aimed at striking Mok Jae-un's face but also intended to blow his head off entirely, using more than 70% of his martial power. But the moment he was hit in the face, he entrusted his body to the force and managed to survive. Ha! Is it innate? Na Yelriang raised the corners of his mouth. He immediately realized that Mok Jae-un's senses were different from ordinary people. His senses were sensitive and innate, almost like a beast. Ordinary fellows would have already been dead. Not bad. Na Yelriang praised Mok Jae-un. At this, the staggering Mok Jae-un said, "You flatter me. No. You're the first one to endure 3 times when I intended to kill, besides that guy from the 5 Tigers." That guy from the 5 Tigers? The 5 Tigers were the top disciples of the Heaven and Earth Society. Since Mok Jae-un had defeated Wu Horang, one of them, he felt puzzled by Na Yelriang's words. If it were Wu Horang, he would have lost his life to Na Yelriang's first slash. Did that mean there was an even more skilled expert? But that wasn't important right now. Mok Jae-un said, "While I understand your reason for wanting to kill me, others might not. Will that be all right?" "Huh. It's hard to endure, so you're using your head." "It's useless." "I know. But I also have to use my head to preserve my life." "You know how to move your tongue despite having only 3 inches, but it's useless. Once I've made up my mind to kill you here today, you absolutely cannot escape that outcome." Swish. As soon as he finished speaking, the eldest young master Na Yelriang reached Mok Jae-un's front. Na Yelriang struck down with his palm towards Mok Jae-un's head. He intended to shatter his head and kill him instantly. He can't dodge this time. Just as he thought that, the moment Na Yelriang's palm touched Mok Jae-un's head, ritual of repulsion. Whoosh. Strangely, as if grasping an eel in his hand, his palm slipped to the side and staggered, missing its target. In that fleeting gap, Mok Jae-un launched a palm strike towards Na Yelriang's heart. Bam. Ha ha ha. At that moment, Na Yelriang let out a laugh filled with madness. Along with it, thud. Boom boom. Mok Jae-un's body was bounced back, crashing into the opposite wall and breaking it. Mok Jae-un coughed up blood as he collapsed along with the shattered wall. Cough cough. He was the one who had struck, but due to the tremendous repulsive force surging from Na Yelriang's chest, he had instead suffered internal injuries. Thanks to that, he clearly realized. Currently, it was extremely difficult to deal with an expert of the transformation realm. In his mind, he listed various secret techniques such as opening the middle elixir field, reverse acupoint technique, left sword right palm, and tried to come up with a plan, but no answer emerged. The difference in level was too great to compensate with secret techniques. At this, Mok Jae-un asked, Ha, what should I do?" In response to Mok Jae-un's question, Chong Ryong said, "It's impossible. If the opponent is a pinnacle expert of the transformation realm, the level is completely different. No matter what technique you use, you can't win." The answer Chong Ryong gave was the cold reality. At her words, Mok Jae-un wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his sleeve and smacked his lips. This time it was truly difficult. After meeting someone of the same kind, he clearly understood. Unless someone appeared and intervened midway, there was almost no chance of surviving this situation. At that moment, the eldest young master Na Yelriang walked over and said, "You're a really interesting fellow." Sizzle sizzle sizzle. A dark red haze was rising from his chest area. It was a phenomenon caused by Mok Jae-un's poison palm. Na Yelriang was genuinely intrigued. He had tried to blow off his head, but due to a mysterious technique, the true energy was pushed in all directions and slipped. Not only that, but he had also launched a full-force poison palm strike towards his heart. Since he had already watched the fight with Wu Horang, dealing with the poison palm wasn't difficult. From the moment he had broken through the bottleneck, he could handle true energy as if breathing, so he could easily dispel the poison as well. The more I see, the more tricks you have up your sleeve. Ha, those tricks. I could use them, for the eldest young master. No. Even if it's 1/10 or 1/100th of loyalty to me, if there's a possibility of stabbing me in the back, it's better to kill you now. Too much distrust, don't you think? Distrust? Well, it's certainty. You're the same kind as me. You probably don't have any fear of death or terror of others. The most definite emotion you feel is probably the desire to kill. That's what makes you feel alive. Can you deny it? Mok Jae-un's lips twitched. He now understood why he had felt a sense of kinship. Except for one thing. Seeing Mok Jae-un's face, the eldest young master Na Yolryang raised the corners of his mouth and said, I am curious. If you're truly the same kind as me, you won't show any despair even at the moment of death. Who knows? I'll find out by cutting off your limbs one by one. Swish. As soon as he finished speaking, the eldest young master Na Yolryang moved. Once again his figure blurred, and in an instant he reached right in front of Mok Jae-un. Na Yolryang's sword force aimed to precisely cut off Mok Jae-un's right arm. Slash. Mok Jae-un concentrated intensely and tried to unleash the ritual of repulsion, one of the techniques of the 8 thought-shattering techniques, at the moment the sword force was about to touch. But at that instant Na Yolryang's left hand struck Mok Jae-un's neck first. Thud. Ugh. Bang. Along with it, Mok Jae-un's body fell sideways and was thrown to the ground. The shattered ground alone showed how hard he had been hit. Na Yolryang said with a sneer. That mysterious technique earlier seemed to target the moment the attack was about to land, but it seems difficult to respond to sudden changes like this. Ha. Chong Ryong clicked her tongue. She had thought there wouldn't be anyone like Mok Jae-un in the world. But this bastard was not only of the same kind but also had an innate sense of combat. He had responded to the ritual of repulsion in just a single attempt. No matter how much of an expert who had broken through the bottleneck, it was difficult to do this. Impossible. This was an existence that Mok Jae-un absolutely couldn't handle at his current level. To think there was such a monstrous fellow. At that moment, the eldest young master Na Yolryang aimed his sword force at Mok Jae-un's right shoulder. Well then, shall we start with the right arm? Shing. Na Yolryang's appearance, with the corners of his mouth reaching his ears, was the embodiment of madness itself. He seemed to feel joy from someone's suffering. The sword force was about to pierce Mok Jae-un's shoulder. Swish. Right at that moment. Crack. The sound of something breaking was heard. At this, one of Na Yolryang's eyebrows rose. What was that sound just now? Roar. Right then. Suddenly, blood droplets began to surge upward from all directions. Then starting from the ground, the walls and everything around began to be dyed in red blood. The sky, which was gradually darkening as evening approached, was suddenly tinged with a bloody color, engulfing everything. What the hell is this? The moment he thought that, everything disappeared as if it had been an illusion. What could it be? It was too vivid to be a hallucination. Sensing an eerie premonition from this unknown and bizarre phenomenon, Na Yolryang felt a strange sense of wariness. An ordinary person would have felt fear or been at a loss due to the wariness, but he was different from normal people. Na Yolryang judged that this sudden and bizarre phenomenon must be related to Mok Jae-un. So, I should just kill him. The moment he made up his mind, he tried to swing his sword force towards Mok Jae-un's neck. At that instant, clang, something blocked his sword force. The thing that blocked the sword force was none other than a long pipe. A long pipe. Mok Jae-un breathed heavily and looked up at the being holding the long pipe. The owner of the long pipe was none other than Chong Ryong. Chong Ryong spoke in a cold voice. He belongs to me. Zap. Feeling a strange sensation that stimulated all 5 senses for the first time, Na Yolryang retracted his sword force. Then he frowned and said, Junior sister? Chapter 155 Coercion 1. The society leader's first disciple, eldest young master Na Yolryang, retracted his sword force, frowned and said, Junior sister? Junior sister? A glint appeared in the eyes of Mok Jae-un, who had been breathing heavily. Na Yolryang had just called Chong Ryong the youngest apprentice. If he referred to the junior sister among the society leader's disciples, it meant the third disciple, Wai So-yun. Ah. Come to think of it, Wai So-yun's appearance greatly resembled Chong Ryong's. They looked so similar that they could be mistaken for sisters without any oddity. The only difference was the unique aura emanating from their appearances. While Chong Ryong gave off an arrogant, cold and intimidating feeling, Wai So-yun had a brighter and more lively atmosphere. However, such subtle differences could only be clearly discerned by those who frequently saw the two or had an interest in them. That seemed to be the reason for eldest young master Na Yolryang's reaction. Junior sister? Chong Ryong also realized from his words that eldest young master Na Yulriang had mistaken her for that mortal wench Wai So-yun. At this point her thoughts began to look in a different direction. Originally, she had revealed her true form at the risk of some danger to save Mok Jong-un from the crisis. Moreover, since it was still daytime and the energy of Yang was overflowing, she had risen to the level of an indigo spirit, but she couldn't fully exert her power. As an example, she had unleashed a small-scale blood realm of the ghost realm that was difficult for the diviners inside the city to notice, but it quickly dissipated due to the energy of Yang. She could draw out more energy here and forcibly maintain it by expanding the radius, but that was extremely dangerous. A high-level diviner might immediately notice. However, a new path had emerged. It might be possible. Eldest young master Na Yulriang was still confusing her with that mortal wench Wai So-yun. No matter how much Na Yulriang pushed his own will, it would be difficult for him to act that way in front of his own junior sister. It wouldn't be long, but it was an opportunity. I will deal with this fellow. Escape to the old man who uses poisons mortal. She spoke so that only Mok Jong-un could hear. Now, while he hadn't noticed yet, was the only chance to escape. Right at that moment. It's been a long time since master has been ill. Junior sister. As expected, eldest young master Na Yulriang still thought of Chong Ryong as his own apprentice, Wai So-yun. Judging from his words about it being a long time, it was even better. At least he wouldn't notice right away. There's no need to engage in conversation. Otherwise she would be exposed quickly. So Chong Ryong swung her long pipe like a sword towards Na Yulriang. Swish. At this, Na Yulriang lightly dodged it by tilting his head back, then used his movement technique to take a few steps back and create distance. What are you doing, junior sister? What was she doing? Chong Ryong smirked, raised the corners of her mouth, and unleashed sword strikes with her pipe towards Na Yulriang. It had been a long time since she had confronted someone with sword techniques after becoming a vengeful spirit. No, had it been nearly 100 years? Bam 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 bam. As Chong Ryong unleashed her sword techniques, Na Yulriang used his movement technique to dodge the trajectories of the sword strikes. His movements were extraordinary, befitting an expert of the transformation realm who had broken through the bottleneck. But at this moment, Chong Ryong's sword strikes unleashed a sudden change. Swish. Caught off guard by the sudden change from an unexpected angle, Na Yulriang, who had one hand behind his back, invoked his blade energy and blocked the pipe. Clang 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 clang. As the blade energy and the pipe created with spiritual power collided, Na Yulriang frowned. Then he said, "Your swordsmanship has improved greatly compared to before." Chong Ryong silently unleashed another sword strike with her pipe. Her pipe coiled like a snake around Na Yulriang's blade energy and bent upward. Na Yulriang immediately moved half a step back to dodge it. As he dodged, Na Yulriang invoked his blade energy and pierced towards Chong Ryong's chest with his hand. But Chong Ryong easily dodged it and instead swatted the blade energy to the side. Bang. This. Thud. Na Yulriang's expression became quite serious. That was because the youngest apprentice he knew was tremendous in internal energy due to her unique constitution, but her technique execution was still lacking. But now, she was wielding sword strikes like an expert who had accumulated considerable practical experience. Since she hadn't received teachings after the society leader, her master, fell ill, there was no opportunity to spar, but her skills had improved tremendously for that reason. Swish. In a moment of doubt, the pipe, imbued with sharp blade energy, pierced towards Na Yulriang's forehead. Swish. Na Yulriang flung his body back to dodge it. Then, while maintaining distance from her who kept trying to attack, he said with a sneer, "As your eldest senior apprentice brother, I am deeply moved by your remarkable improvement in swordsmanship. Let's stop now. I understand that your sword skills have greatly improved. Do you not want to engage in conversation with me?" It wasn't that she didn't want to engage, but she couldn't. She might be exposed through her voice or way of speaking. However, Na Yulriang didn't seem displeased by Chong Ryong's attitude, but instead shook his head. "Are you angry because your senior apprentice brother was trying to kill the fellow you were aiming for?" Swish. As soon as Na Yulriang's words ended, she launched her body again. She was confronting him as a human to give Mok Jong-un time to escape, but sparring with someone whose martial prowess was close to hers from her living days as a martial artist after a long time had inwardly excited her. Even though she had been dead for a long time as a vengeful spirit, it seemed that her competitiveness as a martial artist still remained. Swish 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 swish. Her pipe, imbued with sharp blade energy, targeted Na Yulriang's vital points. Then Na Yulriang immediately. You don't know moderation. If that's the case, I have no choice. Swish. He invoked his sword force, surpassing mere blade energy, and blocked Chong Ryong's sword strikes. Clang 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 clang. When the blade energy created with spiritual power at the blue spirit level collided with the sword force, a strange phenomenon occurred. Every time the energies clashed, a white flash erupted and a shattering sound spread. It was a completely different phenomenon from when strong energies collided. What is this? Doubt filled Na Yulriang's eyes. How could Wei Soyun block the sword force he unleashed with 70% of his martial power? And with mere blade energy at that. Moreover, the white flashes that appeared whenever the blade energy and sword force collided, and the strange sensation transmitted were odd. Different. It was difficult to understand what this was. Clang 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 clang. On the other hand, Chong Ryong, who was intensely exchanging sword strikes with Na Yulriang, also couldn't hide her surprise. He's no ordinary fellow. Chong Ryong clicked her tongue inwardly. She was unleashing sword techniques that followed the society leader's heavenly sword techniques, not her original ones, and although her spiritual power was somewhat limited due to the daytime, Na Yulriang's skills were truly remarkable. She was once called the true sword grandmaster alongside that damn bastard 100 years ago. Yet, eldest young master Na Yulriang was keeping up with her level. If another 10 years pass, perhaps no one will be able to defeat this mortal bastard in swordsmanship. He possessed innate martial talent that couldn't be denied. The current society leader had indeed accepted an incredible person as his disciple. It was worrisome. Could Mok Jiangun catch up to this monstrous fellow in a short period? Although there was a high risk since he was an expert of the transformation realm, it might be better to personally eliminate this bastard right now. As she was about to unleash the moon sword techniques to properly demonstrate her skills. I didn't expect you to make me use this too. What? At that moment, swish. Na Yulriang's right pupil, which had been gray-white, suddenly turned silver. His pupil. What kind of phenomenon was this? As she was wondering, eldest young master Na Yulriang suddenly flung his body back to create distance and said, "What the hell are you?" There was a reason why Na Yulriang reacted this way. He had a special ability. It was something that had emerged long ago when the blood of a strange being not human had fallen into his right eye. When he concentrated his true energy on his right pupil, he could see the vulnerabilities and the flow of energy in others. Although he couldn't maintain it for long due to the pain whenever he used it, it allowed him to easily overpower even experts a level above him. Na Yulriang called this opened eye of his the penetrating eye. 1. However, what is this? Na Yulriang couldn't understand as he looked at Chong Ryong. While most martial artists who had cultivated martial arts had bright and warm energy, she had no energy at all. No, there was energy, but it resembled the gloomy and chilling energy that briefly rose when someone was killed. It was so bizarre that he wondered if she was really a living human being. With suspicion, Na Yulriang said, "Are you really Wei Soyun?" Flinch. At that moment, Na Yulriang stopped mid-sentence and turned his head. It was in the direction where Mok Jiangun was. What? Thanks to that, Chong Ryong naturally turned her head as well, and she discovered Mok Jiangun still lying on the ground. She had been so focused on fighting the fellow that she hadn't noticed, but why hadn't he escaped? Hadn't she barely managed to create an opportunity for him? Mortal. At that moment, Chong Ryong frowned. That was because her ghostly eyes saw Mok Jiangun's death chi condensing and undergoing a change. Chong Ryong's mouth slightly opened. Ha! This change occurring in Mok Jiangun's body. Unlike the normal flow of energy circulation, the death chi was circulating through the reverse acupoints, condensing and then spreading throughout his entire body. Passed through the essence, in the lower elixir field, and then gathered in his chest for the second time before spreading, which was the chi in the middle elixir field, with the death chi moving through the yin in the reverse acupoints. 3 flowers gathering at the crown. What Mok Jae-eun was currently performing was none other than the phenomenon of three flowers gathering at the crown. However, it was different from the typical three flowers gathering at the crown. Originally, the three flowers gathering at the crown was called the three yang gathering at the crown, where the yang within yin, the yang within yang, and the yang within yin and yang, these three yangs headed towards the inner origin and returned to the heavenly palace, which was called the ancestral source. But since Mok Jae-eun used the reverse acupoints, it was the opposite. Three yin gathering at the crown, three. It was the yin within yang, the yin within yin, and the yin within yin and yang. In other words, the three yins were heading towards the inner origin, and the heavenly palace was reversely returning, which was the ancestral source. Mortal you. Mok Jae-eun was not yet at the stage to gain enlightenment. He hadn't even reached the pinnacle of the transcendent realm, so he couldn't fully comprehend the qi. Yet such Mok Jae-eun was currently performing the three flowers gathering at the crown, no, the three yin gathering at the crown, to break through the bottleneck on his own. In other words, he was forcibly trying to break through the bottleneck, not through enlightenment. How in the world? At the moment of wonder. Swish. Na Yelriang launched his body like lightning. I have to kill him. Until now, Na Yelriang had been extremely relaxed. But through the penetrating eye, he felt wariness for the first time upon seeing the strange change in Mok Jae-eun. An eerie energy that was not normal but only briefly seen in the dead, was reversely circulating throughout Mok Jae-eun's body, trying to create the three yin flowers. How could this make sense? He instinctively felt that he had to stop this bizarre phenomenon.